Good morning and welcome to the cybersecurity webinar. I'm Jeanette Stanziana with NYSAC, and I want to let you know how the program will run in terms of questions. All questions will be answered at the end of all of the presentations today. If you would please refer to your dashboard to submit written questions via the question section of your dashboard. And we will be posting all of these presentations in PDF format on the NYSAC website under webinars for your reference. And now I'm turning the program over to Mark Levine, NYSAC Deputy Director.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on strengthening cyber protection for your county. As Jeanette mentioned, my name is Mark Levine. I'm the Deputy Director of the New York State Association of Counties. NYSAC became more involved in the cybersecurity realm last year when we were asked to participate on a cybersecurity advisory team for the 2016 elections. The team at that point consisted of the New York State Cybersecurity Council, the New York State Police, Homeland Security, and the State Board of Elections. We were asked to join the team to be a line of communication to our counties who operate and maintain the local boards of elections, and along with that, maintain the IT infrastructure that connects our counties to the rest of the world. County boards of elections were encouraged at that time to run tests on their IT systems to ensure that their systems had not been compromised. A number of public safety and cybersecurity officials at all levels of government were working to ensure the safety and security of that election in 2016. Since then, NYSAC has held 2 workshops on cybersecurity at our NYSAC Legislative Conference and our NYSAC Fall Seminar last year, or this year in 2017. Both of these workshops were designed to help raise awareness of cybersecurity and educate our county members of the potential vulnerabilities that exist in running, maintaining, and protecting our information systems. Additionally, NYSAC is working with our insurance company, the New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocal, to design a more comprehensive insurance coverage for cybersecurity breaches. Our counties have been asking for more comprehensive coverage, and we are trying to deliver that through NYMER. Cybersecurity issues are not going away. In fact, the vulnerabilities are becoming more and more sophisticated. We have been asked to put together this webinar to clarify some confusion out there, to clarify what is cybersecurity, what is cyber protection. And we are pleased today to have a great team of solutions and a great team of partners that have volunteered to join us to help educate our members and all of those on this call today. We have Vince Hannon from NiceTech. We have Eugene Kipnis from the MS-ISAC, and we have Greg Cato and Andrew Munchback from CrowdStrike. One of the things that we're trying to do today is to describe the whole elephant. What does that mean? It means that cybersecurity and cyber protection are explained, are discussed in different ways depending on who you're talking to. So we decided to pull together the whole cybersecurity team from the human element of business process behaviors to where your information systems are connected to the internet and to the World Wide Web, to your technology endpoints, your tablets, your PCs, and your laptops, and how looking at cybersecurity from each of these points in your IT systems can help you increase and strengthen the protection you have against cyber hackers, cybersecurity, people who want to hold your data ransom, all of those potential things that are lurking out there on the internet. So with that, that is why we're here today. We appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate the team we have put together to help communicate what issues are out there in terms of cybersecurity. So first on the list, we're talking about the human element, the business process element, how to identify the risks that may be associated with your IT systems, how to assess those risks, and then begin to take steps to put together a plan that can shore up those risks so they're not as vulnerable as they might be now. And I turn the attention over to Vince Hannon from NiceTech. Vince?
Thank you, Mark. To start out, I'd like to introduce my partner, Rob Zeglen, who will talk a little bit about NiceTech as an organization.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, my name is Rob Zeglen. I'm a security practice lead at NiceTech. Vince and I work very closely together on these endeavors. And just a brief background on NiceTech, New York State Technology Enterprise Corporation. We are not a state entity. We work very closely with the state. We are a non-for-profit consulting organization. We have 3 offices. We're headquartered in Rome, New York. We have an Albany location and a New York City location. And our roots are with the AFRL when the Griffith Air Force Base closed in the late 90s. NiceTech was born, and we have a mission to do technology transfer and bring solutions and technologies that the state can benefit from, all the way down to the counties. At NiceTech, we're passionate about security. We believe security is really a process. It's not something you can bolt on. You have to kind of build it in. It's kind of like physical fitness. There's no quick fixes. You have to keep at it and keep at it, because the bad guys are always out there, looking for that weak spot. And thanks to the NYSAC for letting us present today, and I'm going to turn over to Vince in a minute. And really, when we have seen a lot of activity this past year, a lot of, you can read the headlines, a lot of attacks have happened, and the bad actors out there, they don't discriminate. Large companies with huge budgets, small schools with almost no security budget, they don't care. If there's data that they can acquire and get value from it, you need to worry about it. So the first thing we usually recommend to clients is do a risk assessment. Security dollars are precious, and Vince is going to tell you about the risk assessment process we follow at NiceTech. It aligns closely with NIST standards that we know are used across the state.
Thank you, Rob. As Rob and Mark both mentioned, it's barely a day goes by when you don't see in the news another event of some organization being compromised, data being lost, often residents' personal data that's very important both on an individual and organizational level. And protecting against those events is of paramount importance. But as money is often limited, and an understanding of what's necessary is often as limited, it becomes very important to have a way to understand what threats face your organization and be able to turn that information into where you can invest your dollars to best protect against the incidents that we'll talk a little bit about in just a few minutes. And also be able to use that information to help your decision makers understand the funding that you're going to need to implement a quality cyber protection program. Today we'll talk about cyber protection strategy. As Rob had alluded to, it is not a single answer. There is no plug-and-play solution. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the first step in a competent cyber protection program, which is risk assessment. And then we'll follow up with some ancillary services that are in the risk assessment sphere, which can also help to understand where your threats are, how to invest your money, and how to petition for extra funding for those efforts. So just when you're looking at the news, it's very easy to say, well, this can't happen to me. This is something that doesn't happen to my organization or organizations like my own. And these are 2 examples on the board right now from this year that have happened in the state of New York. These are hospitals, these are local organizations, these are state. And in these 2 cases, the first, very briefly, is a data breach that happened to an upstate New York hospital. This hospital was a major trauma center for its region. It suffered a catastrophic impact due to a security incident, and they were forced to go to manual processing. Now, it didn't take down services for the patients, thank goodness, but what it did do was it raised a lot of concerns for their people that they were getting the data from the department, for example, of health. And also, because of the reputation damage in their area, there was a lot of questions raised as far as their ability to protect the data that they were housing. The second is a New York State county's 911 system. You might have seen this very recently in the news. It's the attackers got in and took down that system for an amount of time. Now, the good thing was apparently the report was that the 911 services weren't severely impacted, which was a good thing. But you can imagine the amount of data that these systems have, the amount of importance that this is to residents in your areas, and how much of an impact this can have on a personal level and a family level when these things happen. Also, the reputation damage on an organization level. Now, typical outcomes from a security incident. What happens when something like this happens to one of these organizations? Now, obviously, there's data loss involved, and you see newspaper reports, so there's some reputation damage. It raises eyebrows for regulators. But things that you don't normally see on the surface, financial loss. Aside from the costs of doing the investigation, there is credit monitoring services often provided as a standard service for people that have had their personal information compromised. There's cost of litigation. People sue when their information is compromised. Regulatory penalties could be involved depending on what statutes are involved. And quite often, as we've seen recently, especially at a national level, executives tend to step down or be dismissed as a result of these incidents. So it's very important that you have a methodical, pre-planned way of addressing these concerns when they do happen. So what does a competent cyber protection strategy look like? Well, first, as Rob had mentioned and Mark, this begins with a comprehensive assessment of risk. You start out by understanding what threats you face with respect to your business, what the likelihood of these threats having a meaningful impact to your business, and what can happen if something were to happen. What does data loss look like? What happens if your system, your operations go down? This is what a risk assessment involves. Once you have that information, you can then make these planning decisions for your organization. Now, as we had mentioned, there is no quick fix. There are a number of solutions in this space, but there is no plug-and-play answer. There's nothing you can do to go to a store, buy a piece of equipment, and expect it to do everything. This is something that, as Mark had alluded to, is multifaceted. It involves a holistic approach to looking at. There's a human component, there's a technology component, and it needs to come together with a comprehensive and well thought out plan. Most importantly, it involves leadership commitment at the highest levels, both for financial reasons, funding, and also to understand that some of these decisions that are going to be made will impact how people do their jobs, and it's very important to have that complete organizational buy-in for an effective approach. And lastly, this is not something that you can do once a year, once every 5 years. You'll start out with a risk assessment. You will implement technology to address certain gaps that you find. But this is something that happens continuously. There's training. It's got to be baked into your organization where people think about security in everything they do. And it sounds like it would be large. It sounds like maybe you already have this in place, but the truth is, it's something that everyone, even experts, need continuous reminders of what's happening in the world and the best ways to approach protecting it. Now, as far as risk assessment, we covered a few of these benefits already, but it helps to identify the threats to your systems, what gaps you may have, and what the risk to your organization is, both financially, to downtime, to loss of productivity, etc. And the benefits coming out of a risk assessment are very, very straightforward. It helps you to optimize your investment in processes and technology. These are very expensive. If you have $100 to spend, this is how to break that money up to get your most bang for your buck. This is going to show you what the big hitters are, both from a reputation impact and from a meaningful impact as far as technology. if you're looking for a solution in the technology space, a risk assessment helps you understand what questions to ask your service provider, what questions to ask the vendor. What do you need to get out of that tool? This is going to help you do that. You need a comprehensive plan for the implementation of these safeguards. These roll out over time. It's not something that you can put in today or 30 days from today. You need an understanding of what the risks are so that you can hit the ones that are heavy up front and then move forward with the lesser risk ones over time so that you end up with something that is all encompassing. And most importantly, how do you ask for the money to do this? And a risk assessment offers reporting and metrics that's meaningful to your business so that you could take this to a decision maker and say, look, I need money to do this. This is really what happens. Data-driven, studies have shown, and in my experience, it's shown that when you come to a decision maker with data, you often get what you need as far as funding. And that's where the buck stops. Now, the NiceTech risk assessment in specific ends up with a number of products. It's based on the NIST 800-30, which is a document that's an industry standard. But coming out of this is a detailed explanation of what the assessment reviewed, what the threats are in business language. So this could be a very technical risk assessment, but the idea is that the output of this is geared for the people that are going to be reading it, the decision makers. So it's very business oriented. It's heavily reliant on the Center for Information Security top 20 security controls. There is a heat map that comes out of this risk assessment process that shows a comparison against your gaps to the CIS top 20, which is a very important indicator of industry data-driven threats and where you might see impacts to your organization this year. It comes out with a prioritized mitigation plan, high, medium, and low risks, recommendations on where to best invest your efforts and funding to get the most out of the threats and the risks involved. And of course, it talks about business impact. One of the points of a risk assessment is to understand your organization and to be able to marry that to the threats that you face, to come out with some business language to help you understand what could possibly happen if some of these risks were realized. And forgive me for not advancing it a little bit further. I'm talking from a sheet, but here we go. Okay, so this is the slide that I had just discussed. And again, these slides will be available after this presentation, and I apologize for not stepping through as we talk. So some of the products from a NiceTech risk assessment include the following. You have two different basic types of risks. There are adversarial risks. These are the bad guys that are looking to break into your organization to do damage, to steal data, to gain a profit. And then you have non-adversarial risks, like environmental impacts, floods, and people that just do the wrong things at the wrong times. Maybe there's a training issue, et cetera. So there's two different kinds of risks. They both need to be measured, and the approach to addressing them is different. So there are recommendations in both spaces that can help very much plan your investment. This is an example of a map for the CIS top 20. The CSC numbers are the control numbers that come out of the CIS top 20 and the names of the different controls. What you see here is a heat map of purples and blues. The lighter the color, for example, the light blues are where gaps are less evident. The darker ones, for a better word, are where there are more serious gaps that you may have a place to invest your funding to get those numbers up. So this is something that comes along with the risk assessment. This is more of a compliance map. You'll also get a threat assessment as far as what each one of these threats mean to your organization, and again, that recommendation of what to do about it. How to interpret the heat map. So we talked about a detailed explanation of scoring of business risks and how to mitigate those risks and the priority. This is kind of just a takeout from what the report looks like. And in summary, NiceTech has a number of cyber protections in this space. Risk assessment is the foundation. There's other services that are very similar to risk assessment that are used in this in the assessment of risk to your business. Some of them are self-assessment surveys. We have in-person interviews, web application scanning. So we do testing and risk assessment. We do surveys. We do, and how this menu is set up, and the reason it looks this way is, of course, if I went forward, there it is there, and I apologize, I'm kind of bad at moving things forward. But the idea here is that you have a menu of options, and again, this is available on the website. And what the intent of this slide is to understand that no matter what the size of your organization, no matter what the size of your funding level, NiceTech provides an ability to pick and choose what services you feel from an organization perspective makes sense to you, both from a risk perspective and from a funding perspective, to get that understanding of risk and to be able to build your cyber protection program.
All right, thank you very much, Vince. This is Mark Levine again with NYSAC. And I just wanted to let you know that we have material on our website at nysac.org/cybersecurity under resources. You should be able to find it under the resources button on our website, cybersecurity. And there's some information about this webinar. The slides for this that are being used in this webinar are posted there. I'd like to offer, if you have any questions right now, you could submit them in writing and we will take them up. I just wanted to address a couple of things that Vince talked about. First of all, we have been working with NiceTech for a couple of years now, and they have offered these services to our counties for some time. And if nothing else, off of this webinar, it's a reality that there are vulnerabilities out there in our IT environment, in county IT environments. If nothing else, I would engage in getting a risk assessment done to figure out where you are, where you're most vulnerable, and how you can begin to address those vulnerabilities. And the tool that NiceTech provides, there's information about those tools on our website on that page. They designed these tools specifically for county governments in New York State. So after this webinar, please take a look at that. If you have questions, you can ask me, or you can ask Vince. At the end of this, all slides today, Vince's contact information will be available. So at the county level, we run 911 systems, critical 911 systems. We have social services. We run social services. We have information on those social services and the clients who use the social services in our counties. We run election systems, and we have databases on voters, and we have databases on election histories. We have planning information systems. We have tax information systems about taxes. And those are just some of the data that we collect and maintain at the county level. And this data needs to be protected. Questions there. And we encourage you, if nothing else, to do a risk assessment to see where you're most vulnerable and how to begin to deal with those vulnerabilities. Does NYSAC have a special mailing for our election cybersecurity topics? We had one last year for the 2016 election. We did a mailing this year prior to the 2017 election. We anticipate next year again to be critically important statewide and some national elections. So if we do create one, we will make sure to advertise that, and we can put the folks on that who volunteer. So appreciate the question, Scott, and we will address that going forward. Another question: how would a county procure NiceTech services? Vince or Rob? Yep. Rob Zeglen.
So NiceTech is a little bit unique. We have a special contract with OGS that makes it very easy to procure. Counties just have to reach out to NiceTech, and they literally write a statement of work with us to get a statement of work going in through our contract with the state through OGS. It makes it very simple.
Okay. So, and there's a menu of services that are available through NiceTech on the cybersecurity issue, and those are, you can view that menu at our website. There's a list of those services in the report that we provided on that website. I now want to turn our attention to one more question. Are the risk assessments based on the number of assets or overall size of the county? Is there a ballpark pricing structure based on the different sizes of counties / assets?
Could you repeat that?
Are the risk assessments based on the number of assets or overall size of the county? Is there a ballpark pricing structure based on the different sizes of counties and assets?
So the link on the NYSAC site has a lot of that, and that's what we were talking about earlier. It's been designed for counties of different sizes. Kind of small, medium, and large, those are starting points. But yeah, based on, your budget and your assets, and really it's, you want to focus on where you're most vulnerable. But that's how those are starting points. And, one of the things about NiceTech is we really try to, we spend a lot of time developing proposals, something that's unique and works for that particular county. Every county is different, so obviously very different. And we really take the time to develop a proposal that works on both ends. A lot of our people have, I think the average years of experience is 15 or 20. We've been administrators, we've been developers, we get it. It's not an audit. We like to come in and work very closely with the county staffs, all as one team, like all the same jerseys, no names. We're all looking for the same results. So it's very customizable, and the way we structured it, we believe we have a fit for all different sizes and shapes of counties.
Great. Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Vince. And now I'd like to turn our attention to Eugene Kipnis. He's from the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the MS-ISAC. NYSAC is part of the MS-ISAC. And to become a part of the MS-ISAC is free. It is underwritten by the Federal Office of Homeland Security, and it has been designed, and Eugene is going to elaborate on this. It has been designed to help inform local governments across the nation about the different risks that are out there. But the more people that belong, the more informed they can be, and then the better informed we all can be about the risks associated with our connections, our being local government's connections to the World Wide Web. So thank you. Appreciate you being here, Eugene.
Yeah, thanks for having us. The Center for Internet Security is our parent organization for the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And so that's the CIS MS-ISAC. I apologize ahead of time. We're federally funded. It's pretty much mandated we use acronyms as much as possible. So please track with me if you can. CIS, we are the home of the top 20 controls, the artist formerly known as the SANS Top 20. And those are a prioritized list of policy controls and things you can do in your environment to tighten things up. And I appreciated hearing NiceTech using the controls and citing them because they are really a great set of recommendations. They like to apply the, what they call the Pareto principle to the top 5 of the 20, that these 5 will take out about 80% of the threats. They're really simple sounding, but they require some legwork. We're looking at inventory of your devices, inventory of software, secure configurations of software, continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation, and controlled use of administrative privileges, which is a fancier way of saying principle of least privilege. So really, the controls are a great way to kind of take a look at and frame your environment after you've hopefully gotten an assessment done and gotten that baseline. So I highly recommend looking them up. They're free to download. It's a document, and there are sub-controls underneath that go into more depth. We also do offer a few other different things outside of the MS-ISAC that I won't go in depth into, but we do offer configuration guidelines for popular software products that are consensus developed that you guys can use and apply to your environment as well. So that's the Center for Internet Security as a whole. I am with the Multi-State ISAC, the MS-ISAC, and we only work with state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. That is SLTT, another great acronym. So we're federally funded to do this so that we can provide threat detection, recovery, and response, as well as intelligence to our state and local governments. It is free to join. When people ask what the catch is, you paid for it in your taxes. It's federally funded. So, it's always worth taking advantage of. We can serve any type of government. We have all 50 states on board. We have the 79 DHS recognized fusion centers, which are law enforcement centers where people come from different layers of government to share information on crime. Cyber is a component of that now as things have developed. We also work with a lot of tribes and local governments. We actually are at over 1,600 local governments, including many counties in New York. I got to see some familiar faces on the list, actually. It's important to note that if you ever know somebody at a state or local government, we can provide assistance to them, even if they're not an MS-ISAC member. You can open that relationship, and we're glad to help out. One of the biggest points of data that we get is actually from the fact that we are federally funded to have intrusion detection sensors on 51 currently of the 56 state and territory networks. So we're basically able to get a good bird's eye view of the types of threats and attacks that are facing state and local governments. The internet doesn't really know conventional borders. So attacks that are faced in California are probably pretty similar or exactly the same to the types of threats that are facing somebody in New York at the county level. So we're able to aggregate all that info and push all these benefits down to you guys, our members. We do operate a 24-hour by 7-day-a-week security operations center up in East Greenbush, New York. Those of you unfamiliar, it's right across the Hudson from Albany. And what we're doing there is our analyst teams are working on processing the tickets from our intrusion detection services. We're also researching common threats and trends and vulnerabilities that are out there, issuing advisories on known vulnerabilities in software that's important and used commonly by state and local governments. We're also looking at different threat actors and what they're doing through our intelligence analysis team. We actually have a team of dedicated intel analysts that are scouring Twitter, where people love to brag. They're scouring places like Pastebin to find stolen credentials that have been dumped that are owned by SLTT governments. Another thing that we also do here is we provide incident response assistance. And this number here is probably going to pop up a few times. It's kind of like one of those telethon fundraisers. Our lines are standing by. Feel free to give a call any time of night, 1-866-787-4722. You call 3 a.m. on Christmas Day, you'll get an analyst on the line. Probably a little grumpy, he drew the short straw and got that shift. But hey, he's going to be there. He's going to help you out, work with you. You can open a ticket and an incident response engagement if you need to, or even just get what I like to call the sanity check. Discuss the issue a little bit. So as this contact info comes up, if you get nothing else out of it, this is the Ghostbusters number. Who are you going to call when it really gets bad? We do offer our advisories, like I said. They're going to be on products that are relevant to state and local governments, but we're not going to be spamming you with every tiny advisory about every tiny vulnerability. We hope that you guys all have strong patching programs, regular patching schedules. However, this is going to dial in on vulnerabilities that are going to lead to escalation of privileges or remote code execution, the most serious of them that we see that really warrant your attention. We're going to include CVE scores. We're going to include, if we've seen it in the wild, getting exploited at the state and local governments, which is part of our intel team's function. And these are really great to keep up on. They get sent out on an ad hoc basis. Whenever one of these pops up, we let you know. We also come up with a monthly newsletter for end users. This is where I'm going to allow you to shamelessly steal from me. Me and my education and awareness work group actually put these together. They're not written in a way that requires you to speak tech jargon, and it's going to hopefully provide some recommendations for home users to adopt the uses at that level, better computing, but safer computing practices, and have that trickle up to the workplace in a way that doesn't step on your toes policy-wise. So nice feature of this is that it comes in a .doc format. All you have to do is strip off the logo. It says from the desk of Thomas F. Duffy, the MS-ISAC chair. Strip that name and title off and put your own on and distribute it in your organization. Your boss will love it. You'll look great. I highly recommend that. Completely free. Every month these get sent out, and we're actually about to hopefully publish this afternoon one on staying safe while shopping online. We also offer monitoring of your IP ranges and domains. This is non-invasive. I do want to say that. We're not scanning your ports. We're not probing anything. What you do is when you're engaging us in this service, all you got to do is provide us with a list of your public IP ranges, your domains, and your subdomains. On the IP side, we work with organizations like Spamhaus that operate sinkholes and honey nets. And when we receive feeds from these partner organizations of IP addresses or machines that are reaching out in malicious activity, we're going to let you know if any of your assets are showing up on that list. One of the other things we provide is in the domain monitoring, we look for stolen user credentials, like I said, through the intelligence team. They look for places where online criminals like to dump stolen data. We'll let you know you might need to do a password reset and some remediation. Hopefully you haven't actually had a real compromise, but we'll let you know anyway. We also operate what's called the Vulnerability Management Program, one of my favorites because it gets people interested in and thinking about patching. We use a program called the Profiler. All we're doing is basically on an automated basis visiting your websites and web assets that are reachable by domain and subdomain. When we get that information back that says what operating system you're running, content management system version, programming language, we check the versions against what's a known good, known up-to-date list. If we see you have things that are out of date on a monthly basis, we send you a nifty little report that tells you what's up to date, what's out of date, provide some vulnerabilities associated with the versions that are out of date to hopefully scare you into updating. And then from there, you can hopefully get your remediation back on schedule. Completely free. Like I said, nothing I've talked to up to this point costs a dime. Free for any state or local government. That's all we work with and all we do. You can send those domains and IP ranges to the SOC at soc@msisac.org. Conveniently the same email address for if you need something. We also do free incident response and digital forensics. It's free every time. It's not just a trial version. What this means is whether we need to send someone on site, our quote-unquote flyaway team. Now, I assume most of you are from New York State counties. It's probably a drive-away team in this case, but incident response for us means helping you out on site if we need to, helping you quarantine and remediate, or it can even mean you remotely just sending us a digital image of one of your machines that was infected, hopefully the first one that you noticed the infection in. From there, we can provide you, for both cases, a good after-action report in detail about how you got compromised and ways to prevent it from happening in the future. So we're always there to assist with this. This is free for any government, so you don't have to be a member. So if you know somebody at another neighboring municipality, whether it's a school district, a public authority, utility, a county, anybody, let them know that they can use this if you have a friend in need, and they can call us up. No obligation, and we'll work with them. Now I want to talk a little bit about MS-ISAC membership. Completely free. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record with that. All we require is a 2-page NDA that sets some ground rules for information sharing. When you join, you're not sharing any information with us at a default. We're sharing everything downstream to you. You have to opt in to services by sending in your IPs and domains voluntarily, for example, to start using services where we might hold any information of value to you. So when you look at this 2-page NDA, your legal team will consider it a leaflet. They'll probably think it's pretty reasonable. We're always okay to entertain any changes or red lines. You'll get access to a lot more there. You're going to get access to our real cyber intelligence that we send out on a regular basis that is generated from our monitoring network and through our partners at the 3-letter agencies at the federal level and the National Communications and Cybersecurity Integration Center, another great acronym in DC that we have 2 analysts on the floor of permanently. So there's a lot of value here in that you don't have to pay a dime and hopefully get a lot out of it. So this nifty link at the bottom is how you register. Hopefully I'll be able to get back to you within a day or so. Love to have you guys on board before we go away for Turkey Day. When we get into the membership, we're looking at that threat intelligence that's going to include tactics, techniques, and procedures that we're seeing in the wild used by threat actors. We'll create profiles on threat actors, send out some alerts that are timely and based on campaigns and attacks out in the wild. We also provide indicators of compromise. So we actually have a few different reports we send out of particular interest that I'll be speaking about a bit later. And then we also provide some general intelligence papers on the state of cybersecurity in the state and local community as a whole. So if you ever have any whims to just take a look and see what types of attacks are really prominent, we've got a monthly report that sums that up from what we're seeing. We also hold a monthly call you can hop on and have someone kind of explain it in a quick brief. So I highly recommend all that. This report comes out every Monday. This is that really serious indicator of compromise, actionable type intelligence that we provide, one of the examples. The weekly malware IPs and domains report is a list of the top offending sources of malicious activity that we are seeing at the whole MS-ISAC. That's all 51, state and local or state and territorial governments monitoring worth, all 1,600 local governments worth of any incidents that we've processed over the last few weeks. And we take that into a digestible report that you can just take a look at, implement as a blocking list. Basically, what we're looking at is how to make you able to do the most with what you have. And this smaller amount of intelligence, this isn't going to be thousands and thousands and thousands in a huge list, is even manually enterable. We'd prefer you not have to do it manually, which is why we have a partnership with an organization called Anomaly, where we have an automated threat sharing platform. You can do that. Oh, you have a question?
We have a question that's popped up. Are IOCs available in a text-to-feed?
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
sure I know what that actually means. So, do you, Eugene?
I do, yeah. That's actually the Anomaly platform. It's how we do it via Styx Taxi. And so you get those automated, sent to you. You can work with our vulnerability management program team. They wear kind of two hats there, doing that profiling on your websites and assets, as well as helping you get set up to hopefully pipe these indicators in Styx Taxi form into, say, firewall rules, IDS signatures, IPS signatures. So it is, yes, and it is for stacks. So glad you guys are interested in this, because I think it's a huge time saver. All you got to do is put some time in up front, get this set up, and then hopefully you can benefit from it without as much activity. Another thing I'll say, we did purchase some extra threat feeds for the Styx Taxi platform.
And there will be a contact at the end of if not at the end of Eugene's slides, then at the end of this entire presentation, we will provide contact information on our website. And so yes, there will be contacts for all speakers here today.
Yeah, and feel free to badger me with any questions you have about the MS-ISAC in general. We're always glad to help. Next up, we've got our cyber alerts.
Cyber alerts.
The cyber alerts are those timely notifications. Like this one's actually on the binding operational directive about the feds going away from Kaspersky products. We'll let you know about everything from attack campaigns to things the feds are recommending and doing. We just provide those so that you have a timely knowledge of what's going on in the cyber community, for the government community. And now, the only things that ever cost money that the multi-state ISAC does are the services that require above and beyond what we're able to do with our federal funding. We offer that Albert IDS network monitoring that I was talking about that we have deployed at the state level. We don't have enough funding to do it for every single local government in the U.S. I've heard estimates between the 30s of thousands up to 80,000, depending on how you count it, local governments, if only our funding was that good. However, it is available on a cost recovery basis. We're a nonprofit. We charge a very low amount. It's a managed security service. You have analyst eyes on glass performing analysis on these events as they spring up. We also do vulnerability assessments for networks, web applications, provide you with prioritized lists of how to remediate in what's the most important order. And then also we do pen testing, phishing engagements, especially fun, see who's succumbing to the offer of free cupcakes the easiest. And then also security assessments, where we take kind of a holistic look at it using our SysCat tool from the configuration standpoint. That network monitoring, the Albert program, like I said, it is kind of the cornerstone of our intelligence gathering. We kind of ripped off the name from Einstein because we wanted to have it kind of close, but not quite so close. And it is an SLTT focused product. If you're ever interested in that, feel free to reach out. I'm not going to bother you if you join the MS-ISAC about any of the cost-based stuff. So it's really on a voluntary basis. And I guess I'm going to leave you with some sage wisdom, I hope, about sharing information. Learning from others' practices is really important. We don't want everybody out there constantly reinventing the wheel. Part of what the MS-ISAC does is it connects you with best practices of other local governments and state governments. We've got a Homeland Security Information Network community dedicated to secure information exchange and sharing. We've got forums on there to discuss hot topics, things that are going on, implementations you might be doing. We, as a group, as a corporation and a company, are product agnostic. However, if you want to ask people in the SLTT government community about their experiences with products or how they've been able to make configuration changes on their networks, anything of the sort, you can do that on a personalized basis with them, facilitated through our community. Government's not competitive unless you're all fighting over the Amazon East Coast headquarters, but we're really looking to make sure that you guys are sharing information together, keeping on top of threats, and prepared, hopefully, a little bit more for everything that's out there. And as I promised, here's more of that 1866 number. Anytime you guys need anything, you can feel free to reach out to this, snap a pic of this, grab the grab the slides down and keep this in your Rolodex if you still have one. And feel free to sign up as a member. It's no obligation, no cost, and we'd love to have you on board. And then if you want to bother me in particular, feel free. I'm right at the bottom. Feel free to give me a call, email anytime, and glad to connect you with any services or assistance you might have. We also partner with DHS very closely on programs that they manage as well. So thank you guys so much for hosting me. I'll hand it back to Mark.
Great. Thank you, Eugene, very much. And just to reiterate, one question I have again is, how much does it cost to join the MS-ISAC, Eugene?
It is free. It is a great investment of $0.
Okay. And so what's the catch? Why are not all local governments in New York State members of the MS-ISAC?
I have to be honest, I think it's because we don't have that multi-million-dollar advertising budget. When I meet people and I find them, when they hear about it, they join, has been my experience. And the more we can get ourselves out there through partnering with organizations like NYSAC, the more we can make an impact in the state and local community.
Okay, great. With respect to the fee-based services, is that all provided via in-house resources or outsourced? I assume there is some practical limit to the amount of engagements you could undertake, assuming local governments begin to clamor for these services.
Actually, we do them all in-house. When I say we don't bother you about the paid services, I mean it. We don't constantly reach out to our members asking them if they want to buy things from us. We're really a membership, a free-driven association. So we do have to staff up as we've been growing. We've had a large growth in membership of about 35 or 40% this year to date. So yes, we are starting to get a little more swamped with them, but we've been expanding accordingly. Cyber threats aren't getting any more scarce for local governments, and local governments aren't getting any less connected. So we're proud to say we do it in-house, and I hope to continue doing it that way for a long time.
Great. Again, thank you to the MS-ISAC and the Center for Internet Security. We have been working with the Center for Internet Security for some time, offering trainings to county officials who want to take advantage of those. Those are also available at the Center for Internet Security. So we thank you for your time. There's also on the website that I spoke about earlier, which is if you search for cybersecurity on the NYSAC website, you'll come up with the resources page on cybersecurity, and there's a frequently asked questions page on the Center for Internet Security / the MS-ISAC. So that information is available along with the NICE-TAC risk assessment information. I want to take this opportunity to turn our attention over to Greg Cato with CrowdStrike Incorporated, who will talk about another aspect of cybersecurity and how to strengthen cyber protections for your county, this time from the standpoint of your endpoints, your PCs, your laptops, and your tablet devices. So, Greg.
Mark, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I've got Andrew Munchback on the call with me, and he's going to be showing you some live software in a minute. Anyway, I work for CrowdStrike, and we think, one of the premier endpoint protection companies out there. You may have seen this in the news. Some of the things we do are a complete suite of products, endpoint protection, which is cloud-based software. I'll get into that in a minute. In addition, we provide other services that Andrew and I will explain. But I want to take a level set here. Why are the bad guys winning, I'd say, versus our counties, but versus everybody these days? These attacks today are sophisticated. It's almost like a cancer that's metastasized. I don't mean to be so blunt, but that's the situation where it's almost like a cyber 911. And we could talk about a lot of things, but you've got to staff yourself up with sophisticated tools to combat these attacks that are really, really complex today. The ransomware and malware you're familiar with. Counties don't have a lot of personnel. That's where we come in. We actually have a service that we provide that provides you some of the software, does a lot of the automation for you. Extended procurement cycles in counties are never good, and in state government too. These are a problem we're working on, and we have a method to sort of collapse that for you. Some of these are customers. We were called into the Sony hack. Our product actually installs in less than 5 minutes and provides a forensic look at what happened. It also prevents attacks, and we are called into some of these companies that have had these things. Well, also the lack of visibility. Your county executives or your county supervisors or your mayors probably don't have the visibility they should, and you don't have the visibility to give that to them, which leads to lack of executive buy-in. Why do I have to spend money on software and all this stuff? Because they don't really have the visibility. And I would tell you, we're one of the few companies that have expertise in election protection, and we think the coming elections are an extreme cyber threat. It's one of our main focuses is protecting candidates, elected officials, counties, and state governments against some kind of election hacking. As you know, this comes on a lot on the TV, and if you don't do it right, you get the White House commenting on the ransomware attack when it was WannaCry. Thankfully, none of our customers were affected by that. What we've come up with is the New York State County Cyber Shield. We have easily installed endpoint protection. We also work with CIS. I put that in there in a very complementary fashion to protect you from these complex attacks. How do we do that? And who are we protecting? Very simply, we protect the world's leading brands. I mean, some of these are on here, guys. I can go through them, but it's a who's who in today in our commercial world. These companies have all staffed up with CrowdStrike or used our software to make sure they don't get attacked. Locally, government, who do we protect? I mean, we're rolling out at New York City right now at Do It, and they actually call it Cyber New York now. It reports right to the mayor. So we are at over 150,000 endpoints. And endpoint, I mean where that device meets the internet. So laptops, PCs, servers, any kind of Microsoft Surface device. Those are the devices we protect, workstations. I'm scaling up to about 450,000 there. I'm 150,000 live. By the way, rolled out in less than 3 months, and will be complete by the end of the year, which is pretty amazing. Board of Elections in New York City is our customer. We protect that voter database there. We have agencies in the following states that I mentioned there. NYPD is rolling us out right now, a very big get for us because they trust us. I have a lot of colleges. I just got Duke. I have a lot of health centers, Kaleida, Trinity Blue Cross, Harvard, Princeton, all the things you see. Certain federal agencies I can't mention because they're so confidential. And I mean that at the end. It's a 5-minute install with no reboots. You don't have to, it's a very non-complex install. If you're an IT person, you use SCCM, or you even use Max DPO, we can push out with those tools. But I'm going to tell you that the proof is in the pudding. No high-priced consultants were needed. At Do It, they did it on their own, and I expect it to be just as simple in any of our customers' accounts. That said, let me give control, Jeanette, if you give control to Andrew. We're going to have Andrew show you what I mean by visibility and show you what I mean by making sure you have the right tool to combat today's threats. Yep, so give him a minute. Andrew, you're going to be unmuted and you can talk in 1 second.
Andrew, we'll be with you in just a moment. Okay, Andrew, you are live.
Wonderful. Thanks. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Or can everyone that can speak hear me? Excellent. Awesome. So my name is Andrew Munchback. I work with Greg. I'm on the engineering side of the house. So I'm the manager of security engineering here at CrowdStrike. I've been here for about 3 years. And so I'm just going to go through sort of how we kind of view the world. We're a global organization. We do counterintelligence. We do obviously endpoint defense, as Greg mentioned. So there's a lot of lessons being learned, I think, by all of us as security practitioners over the last few years. Sort of the old mindset's going away. And, we're trying to solve big problems. We're trying to solve them at scale. And we're trying to solve them with limited resources. So just kind of a few data points there. And then at the end, I'll briefly cover, some of the CrowdStrike niceties. So really defining the problem is you know, kind of key to step one, right? You have to know what you're working with. And so the real crux of it, what we're all facing now, is kind of the democratization of cyber threats, right? So these things that usually only used to be available to some of the world's most advanced threat actors have become completely commoditized. And if you know, you can go through the list here. These are just a few of the things that were dumped as part of the Vault 7 leak, which was, you know, which is a set of tools supposedly made by the NSA and then supposedly stolen by the Russians, and then definitely published online. All of these things are now available and being leveraged in just commodity attacks. The level of sophistication is high. The code is actually quite elegant, and it's really hard to defend against, right? I mean, some of the stuff like that top one there, Eternal Blue, which was how you know, malware families like NotPetya, the second major ransomware event of this year, really propagated. You know, you could have been fully patched for 5 years, and your systems would have been subject to this. So that's kind of the landscape that we're facing, right? I mean, it's a little bit daunting when you think about it. We're also facing the democratization of IT, right? With things like cloud, you know, the Internet of Things, your washing machine's hooked up to a network connection now, and BYOD, you know, we're getting more connected and more distributed. So that makes, you know, the old sort of the old adage, you know, you build a nice wall, you make the wall tall and strong, and you add some checks, and then you put everything inside the wall, and everything inside the wall is safe. The wall's gone, so now we have to kind of rethink what our perimeter is and how we can sort of best guard that. And so the second part is really understanding the problem, right? Now that we've kind of gone through this cathartic, you know, self-discovery, what do we do about it? And so there's the real problem of being the blue team, right? And I think my friends over at MS-ISAC who do compromise assessments can vouch for this. So if you're on the blue team, you're defending something. And when you're defending something, when you have this prevention-only strategy, you have to be right 100% of the time. The problem with that is when you're defending something, there's someone attacking it, and they only have to be right once. You know, so the odds are heavily stacked in your favor, and you really do have to sort of prepare for failure. The next thing we need to do now that we know this is we need to work the problem. And I have this whole tagline underneath, you know, it's okay if you cry a little during this process, because it's right. These are big, again, these are big problems. We're solving them at scale, and typically we're doing them with limited resources. So how do we work the problem? There's 3 things we need to do specifically when you're trying to sort of defend yourself. You need to get information, you need to get in the way, and you need to get out of Dodge, right? So you need to be able to detect things, you need to be able to disrupt things, and then you need to be able to remediate things. And this is sort of this constant, you know, sort of continuum that we're going to go through over and over and over again. So that's sort of at high level what we're going to do. And then you need to adapt, right? So, and I always go over the TSA paradigm, right? These are all things that someone at one point tried to blow up. All of these things we have to either take out of our bags or we're not allowed to bring through TSA, with the exception of the last one. Luckily, we don't have to take off our underwear when we go through airport security. But these are the old problems, right? The last attack will not likely be the same as the next attack. We kind of have this, you know, we have this back and forth where it's, okay, this happened, so now I'm going to do this so that doesn't happen. That's good looking backwards, but we really need to look forward, right? You need technologies that can adapt on your behalf and at your behest, right? So on your behalf means you're partnering with either organizations or companies or enterprises that are forward looking and not sort of reverse looking. And then they also have the ability to kind of tailor themselves to your environment. So on your behalf, because we have limited resources, and at your behest, because we know our environment better than anyone else. And these are some of the things that we're seeing, right, from the CrowdStrike perspective. Much like MS-ISAC, we do our own intelligence ingestion. We do red team engagements. We do incident responses. You know, we have a SOC. So we see a lot of the things, a lot of the same things that they do. And we also, you know, sort of categorize threat actors. And there's this one called Overlord Spider. They're also called Dark Overlord. They're a very sophisticated e-crime group. So they're not nation state, certainly, but they have a very, very high level of sophistication. And they targeted an Iowa school district. And so it's a little bit funny to see that, you know, sort of the objectives of these groups change from more sort of this corporate espionage or, you know, sort of corporate theft to targeting state and local governments because they have data and now they know that that data can be monetized. You know, the big story about ransomware isn't that it's a huge pain in the butt and that it encrypts files. It's that any piece of data, regardless of how, you know, how minute it seems, can be monetized, right? If someone were to encrypt your entire library of pictures, right, and you have digital pictures that have been around for 15 years, you have 15 years worth of pictures, you might not want to lose that, right? You might even think about paying that ransom. And by the way, you should never pay a ransom, but it's sort of the point is any data set can kind of be monetized now with some of these new threats. So what are we specifically, what is CrowdStrike doing about this? We have an endpoint solution, as Greg mentioned, and we really focus on some of those three areas, right? We want to get information. So that's this left side, right? We have, you know, there's all sorts of buzzwords here, but we have prevention engines that are based on both behavior, reputation, and heuristics. We have the ability, we have a flight data recorder on your endpoint. So when you need to find stuff, or if you think something may have happened, or we get a new piece of information, right? MS-ISAC tells you, hey, I just gave you these IOCs. These things are bad. You need to go find them in your environment. We can do that. And things like device control, so you can, you can kind of narrow in what's operating in your environment. There's this middle part where we can be proactive here, right? Where you can hunt and you can do things like hygiene and do vulnerability management. So you're constantly looking for rogue systems, rogue accounts, rogue applications, you know, really kind of to come in on the top 20 controls. Our particular solution set satisfies probably about 6 of those with just one, you know, piece of software. So it's, you know, and again, this is forward looking. This is where it is now, but we're looking down the road because we want to say, hey, where else does it make logical sense for us to put a control in place where we're not going to disrupt our customer base? And then we need to get more information, right? That's on the right. That's where we have things like threat intelligence and services and a few other products. So that's how CrowdStrike sort of operates in this new paradigm and in this new bubble. So we do big data stuff. So MS-ISAC is an awesome organization. I used to work at MIT, and we had NYSAC, which was research and engineering, you know, information security sharing thing. It's the equivalent of MS-ISAC just for sort of schools and research institutes, and they're hugely valuable. They were contained mostly to the US, I believe, as MS-ISAC is. CrowdStrike does some of this stuff globally, so we're deployed in 176 countries, which gives us a little bit of a global reach, which is great. And we run on big data statistics, right? So we see 2.4 million security events per second at peak. On average, we see right around 1 million. We process 70 terabytes of security data a day and 80 billion events. So on the right, you can kind of see a chart there. Some of our security events versus things like WhatsApp instant messages or Apple iMessages or even Google searches, right? So when companies talk about big data, you know, we're really trying to provide that because there's this herd immunity, right? What our goal is once we see an adversary or an attacker use a piece of tradecraft, we want that tradecraft to be burned. And we also want to be able to look for it in the past. So if someone comes up with some new face melting technique, which they're obviously going to because, you know, you can watch the news and you just see this stuff, you know, you just see this stuff coming up. We want to be able to look backwards and say, hey, we know now going forward it's bad, but has it happened to any of our customers in the past? The goal really is to take dwell time. You know, I think the misconception is that, you know, something runs in your environment, right? You a piece of malware or whatever you want to call it is allowed to run, and then you have a data breach. It's not really that simple. It's usually something happens, something goes undetected for weeks, months, and then, you know, your adversary kind of has a foothold in your network. They can fish around, they can find what they're looking for, and then you have a breach. The average dwell time for an adversary last year, I believe, was 144 days. We're trying to smash that down to minutes or, you know, an hour at the worst. That's really how you kind of plan for failure, right? If someone's going to get in, you need to be able to find them, disrupt them, and remediate them very, very rapidly. And doing all that with limited people, resources, you know, and not a defined perimeter. So it's a big problem, and this is kind of how we're solving it with our particular piece of technology. So that's almost it for me. So just a quick recap, right? You need to know what the problem is. You need to understand that problem. You need to find solution sets that will help you work that problem, you know, in your own environment. And then you need to adapt as things move forward, because if you put a solution in place, right, you have a project, you spin it up, and you just sit on it for 2 years, you are, you know, 1 year and 364 days out of date. So just building in some maintenance to some of these initiatives that we put in the way. And so with that, I will take any questions if anyone happens to have them. I'll check the chat here.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, thanks, Andrew. Thank you very much, Andrew. This is Mark Levine again with the New York State Association of Counties. I encourage you at this time, if you have any questions, we are going to move from the presentation point of this webinar into the Q&A. So please let us know if you have any questions. I will also, or Jeanette is also going to put up a slide with the contact information of all of the presenters that presented today, and also the URL for the page that I referenced earlier. We have a question from St. Lawrence County on the endorsement. Is NYSAC endorsing CrowdStrike for local governments? I will say that what we are endorsing we are recommending that counties do a risk assessment, that they figure out where your vulnerabilities are, and then develop solutions or explore solutions that can address specifically where your risks are. CrowdStrike came to us from New York City Public Safety and New York City Do It. New York City is a member of ours. So they have been recommended to us, and we brought them to you here today. So they are a recommended entity for looking at or strengthening your endpoint security for information, for improving your cyber protection. We are also endorsing and recommending that you sign up for the MS-ISAC, which is, again, the free service available to you through the Center for Internet Security. So at this point, I'd like to see, are there any other questions out there from participants? Okay. Right. One of the questions that has come up today and in several other meetings that we have held is, will there be resources and grants available from the state of New York for cybersecurity issues? And I can answer that in that your Association of Counties is recommending to the state of New York that resources be made available to counties and local governments to strengthen their position of cybersecurity for counties. A lot of the data that we hold and the information systems that we maintain at the county level are connected to the state of New York State Department, and they are well aware of that. They are working hard to help us. They are on the line today participating in this webinar, and we are encouraging through the state budget some resources be made available from the state of New York to our counties and local governments. Another question that's come in, what types of findings are typical in your risk assessments? I guess that is directed at NYSAC.
Sure, thank you. So, you know, we see things all over the board. One thing I will say is that usually when we have findings, we align them with the CIS Top 20, and that CIS Top 20 is listed in priority order for a reason, and usually they end up at the top. And a lot of things we see are, you know, Vince alluded to, you know, non-adversarial threats, IT departments are busy. They have jobs to do. The funding isn't always there. We get it. Excuse me. A lot of times there's things out there that you may not know are out there. Old devices that are left hanging out on the firewall, on the perimeter, things like that we find. And it's really that low-hanging fruit, those things that we would prefer we find them together before an adversary finds them. So I would say, some of the typical things are on the non-adversarial side, mistakes get made. Computers are a lot better at doing things repeatedly the same way than humans are. Humans are the problem. We're terrible. We let things slide. And it's a lot of those things that have been overlooked, missed, and you really got to start there with getting the low-hanging fruit. Patching, knowing what devices you have out there, staying current. Those are some of the best free advice you'll get is start right there, and that's usually a lot of what we find in risk assessment.
So to add one thing too, one of the things about risk assessment that's vital is that there's a lot of hype out there. And forgive me, there's a lot of vendors in this space. There's a lot of news media in this space, and everybody has a reason for bringing certain threats to light. And it often benefits the products that they sell. It often benefits ratings. It often benefits what? How do you know what really is facing your environment? The reason I bring that up is it's very easy to look at the most flashy threat that's out there. Ransomware might have been one of them, and I'm not going to discount that because it's very serious. But there are threats. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, there was a threat. The people were worried as mobile devices were coming online that there was a lot of viruses on mobile devices, and people were going to be using them for business. It was a big problem. Well, it turns out that the data in that particular year did not support that particular thought. It turns out in successive years, it became a bigger problem. But a risk assessment helps you understand today, if I was going to spend the money that I have today, where would I be able to hit those low-hanging fruit items? So you're kind of scrubbing the surface area of so many threats that you have to think about, which is the most important. Now, the MS-ISAC is I think, one of the most important things that we learned today from there is this is not something you could do in a bubble. Aside from risk assessment, which should be core to your security program, you need to collaborate with the folks around you, with these organizations. You need to look at these free resources to understand what threats are out there. Not only are you going to find the threats, but you also understand what are these threats, and they change. So, and that's one of the things I want to say about risk assessment is that it's one of those things that helps you identify what's really important now and kind of get rid of that hype. So.
Great. Thanks, Vince, and thanks, Rob, from NiceTech. Does the usage of CrowdStrike platform replace the current use of security measures or as an adjunct to the current model? Greg?
Yeah, I can answer that, Mark. Easy. It can do both, one or the other. So if you have an existing security platform that you like, we can install and augment because we're more modern and flexible. We'll probably give you better information. We also can replace any legacy antivirus out there or any legacy endpoint product you have. Typically, these products are multiple agents that require a lot of money. I am engaged with the New York State Attorney Generals right now in replacing their legacy endpoint protection because they are paying a fortune every year to a vendor. So we can replace it. It's easier. I fully endorse what everybody's saying about risk assessments and all that. I can tell you there may be an adversary in your environment right now you don't know. The CrowdStrike Falcon will find it immediately. These are things that we can do all working together, and we're happy to have that discussion with you. If that's Edwin and Orleans, we're happy to do that. We're down the road, by the way, with Fulton too, and that if anybody's concerned, in Westchester. So thank you.
Great. Seeing no other questions, I want to one more time thank our participants, our presenters here today, Vince Hannon from NiceTech, Eugene Kipnis from the MS-ISAC, and Greg Cato and Andrew Munchback from CrowdStrike. Again, we have some resources that have been made available by our presenters on our website at www.nicesac.org/cybersecurity. Please go out and take a look. The PowerPoint presentations are available at that site, and there will be a link to this recorded webinar as well. Thank you again very much, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.